Welcome to the ABCs of Horses, a Big Blend radio podcast featuring Christy Wood, a world champion horse trainer, a carded horse show judge, an equestrian expert, and an author. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to dig into noise and sounds of horses on today's Big Blend Radio ABCs of Horses show with world champion horse trainer Christy Wood, who just came back from an awesome vacation, but now she's back in the saddle. Christy, welcome home.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back in the saddle.
Now, when you take vacations, do you ever get on a horse?
Oh, yes. Probably 90% of my vacations involve a horse because I love to be recreational with my horses as well, not just competing. But this was a different vacation. This was down in Tahiti, and I enjoyed the water and the sun and the sand and the surf, and I did not take a horse.
Okay. Did you get on a surfboard?
No, but I got on a jet ski, and that was fabulous to go around the lagoon on a jet ski. It was fabulous.
Okay, so that's kind of that had horsepower.
Horsepower, I guess. You're right. Yeah. I guess I can't get away from it.
Well, speaking about that, and they're a little noisier than horses, though. But you're gearing up. You've got to be, May is here and, July is like 2 months away. So are you gearing up for the, big Chief Joseph trail ride?
Yes, I'm gearing up in a lot of different ways. I'll just get out a little information on the Chief Joseph trail ride. We applied for a C3 designation and we received it because we're educational and historic. So we are now in the process of doing fundraising because now we can give back to people that want to support us with equipment. We have to raise money for equipment and different amenities to keep the ride to its wonderful skill level that it always has been. And so I'm involved with that. But yes, I'll start probably May 1st. I'll start gradually getting my horse ready. And then June 1st is definitely the countdown where I'll ride my horse 10 miles every other day.
Now, wow. So, for folks who don't know, this is a trail ride that has been done historically through the Appaloosa Horse Club. And the Appaloosas are horses that were first bred by Chief Joseph from the Nez Perce. And Christy and other riders follow the trail that they loosely, as best they can, follow the trail of the Nez Perce as they were running and escaping or trying to escape from the cavalry. So some of the ancestors of Chief Joe they go on the ride with you or participate in different ways. So this is it's a 13-year progressive trail ride because it goes through multiple states and it's really a beautiful part of the country. I was just talking about this on the show the other day about going to Joseph and St. Joseph and seeing Chief Joseph's resting space and it's just such a beautiful, beautiful area to ride, but getting to noises and sounds of horses, you guys camp out there. So how important is it for you to listen to your horse's noise when you're like out at the campfire? If you start hearing your horses do some like different noises, that should be like an alert to you if something's wrong, like if a coyote's circling or something like that.
Well, horses have sounds. They make sounds in order to communicate. So you and I have a verbal language. Horses have a language through their sounds. Besides their body movements of head and ears and tails, and movement with their legs, they communicate through their noises, which are the sounds that they will make. And so we'll just generally talk briefly, and then we'll go back and go over each one, but they have a whinny, they can have a nicker, they can have anxious calling, a panic type of sound, definitely a flirting between male and female horses, and then definitely a danger or an alert to alert the rest of the herd. But any kind of a sound that a horse is going to make, you as an equestrian or a horse owner, your horsemanship skills should include listening to that sound and listening to its frequency, the volume, and the intensity. Because that's going to tell you and give you a good idea of what is happening with your horse.
Okay. So like if you heard the frequency and they were pretty adamant and consistent, like if it was like a whinny or a neigh, like pretty fast and you were around the campfire and you heard that and maybe some stomping, because stomping sometimes too, like,
Well, that's what I meant. Yes, about moving the legs. You bet. You
yeah.
hear a lot of stomping. There's going to be, why are we stomping? Are they standing on an anthill? Or is
Oh,
there
yeah.
a threat from danger of possibly a bear or something like that? You just
Oh,
never
yeah.
know.
You have to
But
watch for bears where you are, right?
yes, we're alerted to bear. Gosh, you've got to watch out for bears and rattlesnakes, definitely coyotes. When we get into riding through Yellowstone on the Chief Joseph Trail ride, the biggest danger are the grizzly bears. And I
See,
always
that's a little
thought,
different.
that's a
Yeah.
little different. I always thought that my horse could outrun just about anything. And the park ranger from Yellowstone came and had a talk with us and said, your horse cannot outrun a grizzly bear. And I've seen
Wow.
videos of bears running, and they are fast. So
Wow.
we'll talk about that later when we get a little further along. And matter of fact, when we get in about 2 years, we're going to be riding through West Yellowstone, and I'll bring that topic up and let you know what we do as a group when we do our
Wow.
rides in Yellowstone, what we do to stay safe.
Wow, that's amazing because Nancy and I just had bear encounters and they snuck up on me. Like I was out there with four bears around me.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, well, they snuck up. It was trash day in Asheville. They
Of
know.
course.
And then we've got a big mud paw on our car. And Nancy's like, we need to photograph that. We need to save. She's like, I don't want the dirt to take it away. But I
Mhm.
mean, they snuck up on me when I was on the other side of the car. Two little cubs. They're kind of maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And
Mhm.
then there was a big one, and a guy down this driveway yells at me, and he's like, "Be careful!" And I'm like, "What?" And as he said that, I was like, I knew there were bears, and I looked, and there's a big, Papa and the mama, and they're black bears like what you get in
Yes.
the Sequoia. So your horse is to be, your horses need know, you have the same thing.
Mhm.
When especially spring, they're all out and about, and the guy's like, later I met with him, and he like had a bear whistle and everything. He's like, no, that big bear just opened his car door and took his lunch and walked on.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
did the big whistle, and the bear just looked at him. He goes, yeah, you think the whistle's going to stop me? So, I mean, it's pretty funny what we humans, think and do. But,
Mhm.
these are wild animals. I don't care if they're in
Yeah.
your neighborhood, they're still
Yeah.
wild. And what you do. And I think that's the thing about going back to sound. Sound tells you everything. Sound, when you're bird watching, it's the sounds you follow more than anything to find where the birds are,
Yeah, well, just to let you know about those bears, as big and heavy as they look, they are very good at sneaking up on whatever they want to try to
Yeah.
eat or take down for whatever reason. So you could turn around and not know that they're there. You would think that you would hear them walking up, and they know how to sneak. They're very, very quiet. So you just have to be careful with those sounds
Yes, they got
or
me.
lack of
They got
sounds.
me. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so that's the cool thing about what we're talking about, is when we talk about these sounds and understanding them, right? So
Mhm.
horses have the sounds, so that's like an alarm system, which is great,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But yeah, but sounds could also be friendship, right? All of that.
Right. Well, yeah, so let's
It's
start out
not
with the
all
first
alarm.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
go
start out
ahead.
with
Yeah.
talk about a nicker. And a nicker is an interesting sound. It's not a full whinny, which is the extreme strength of a horse's voice. The nicker is kind of a more guttural sound in their throat. They really use it for affection,
Hmm.
for comfort. They definitely use it when they're excited to get food. So it's a more of interacting. I've recognized you. I know who you are. Oh my gosh, you're bringing me my dinner. You've called me. I know you called me because you have an apple in your hand. And so they'll acknowledge you with a nicker. And unfortunately, I'm not a good ventriloquist. I'm not a ventriloquist, but I'm not a good interpreter. Not interpreter. What do they say? I can't make the sound like I'd like to. I guess I should have made some recordings of this, but a nicker is just a really soft sound that they have in their nostrils and a little bit in their throat of just acknowledging you. Mainly, it's for comfort. And again, acknowledging me. And my horses probably do this most of the time when I see me pulling up with the hay wagon. And they know it's
Oh,
feeding time, morning and night. They're happy to see me. They greet me with that nickering sound. They're excited. Oh my, I got one horse that drools. He's so excited
Oh
to
my
get his
gosh.
full. He
Are you
starts
kidding
drooling.
me?
I know it's darling. He's getting he's getting ready with his saliva to start eating. He loves his food and he's just charming. He's actually one of our newer horses. His name is Magnum. And he loves to just let me know he's seen me, he's acknowledged me. He is just so happy that I'm here to feed him his breakfast this morning. And so he nickers at me all the time.
That's cute. You
Yeah.
know, that's
So
cute.
with that nicker, he does it frequently. It isn't just one. He does it over and over and over again. I am so glad you're here. I am so glad you're here. I'm glad you're not late. I mean, he just repeats it and repeats it until the hay gets into the feed tub and he gets to start chowing down. So he does it frequently. That means that then by his frequency, it tells me how excited he really likes his food. Hopefully he likes me bringing him his food, but he's excited about getting his food. So he does it frequently. If I call my horse that's farther out in the pasture and Dollar knows I have an apple in my hand and I have a certain whistle that I use for my horses so they know it's me. If I whistle for her, hold that apple up, she'll come trotting over to me and nickers once or twice going, oh, I'm glad it's you. I know you've got a treat for me. So it's not as frequent because she's already had her meal. She's already satisfied, but she knows it might be an extra treat. So her frequency isn't as much.
Wow.
So
That's your frequency, but then you're also making a horse sound for them to recognize you. So that's an interesting
yes.
thing. So when we talk about horse noises, right, we're talking about, but what about the human noise? I mean, a horse is going to know if you're upset, if you're happy, you're excited, you're scared by the tone of your voice.
Well,
Too.
certainly. So the first thing I tell my students when they come for a horseback ride or somebody that's new taking lessons with me or training is the first thing I tell them is that your horse is going to reflect your energy. Your horse is going to reflect how you feel today. If you're tense and you're unhappy and you use strong words and you just push things around, you can hear the intensity in my voice just even saying these words.
Yeah.
Then your horse is going to be a little bit on alert, wondering, why is that person talking like that? Is there something that I need to be concerned about? So if we keep ourselves calm, have a nice, calm, patient voice, kind of talk in the same tone, you're relaxed, your horse is going to be relaxed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because it's understanding each other's sounds,
Right,
and
right.
I feel like we should be playing the Beach Boys Pet Sounds album in the background. But hey, that's how it rolls. But
Yeah.
so you talked about winning the knickers, that's comfort, excited for food. But what about the actual anxious? What kind of sounds are we looking for with the anxious?
Well, yeah, so let's go back a little bit and talk about whinny, the whinny.
Okay.
And that's
yeah.
a sound that we hear, we've heard that on TV movies. We hear it, if you watch rodeos, yeah. Well, that's a nicker. That's pretty close.
That's
sort of the nicker. Now the whinny is much more intense and it reverberates much, much more. And so the whinny is more of a guttural sound. Their full body is behind the whinny.
Okay.
So they are using all the strength they have to communicate through that whinny, and it could be for a lot of different reasons. But again, we're going to listen to the frequency of it, the volume, and the intensity.
Okay.
So a horse could reach you, not just with the nicker, but with a whinny, and Dollar will do that once in a while. If I wake her up out of a nap or something, and I say, Dollar, got your apple for you, and I have a whistle that I use for my horses, she might wake up and go, oh, it's you! And I get a big whinny, and then maybe one or two nickers after that. And the whinny just really acknowledges, or she may use that while she's running towards me. It depends how much she really wants that apple. And so that comes with, again, the intensity of that whinny is something we need to listen for. So horses will raise that volume of a whinny into a panic. If you have an anxious horse or a panicked horse, they're going to call out for whatever the reason might be. Now, the reason could be a separation anxiety, being separated from one of their herd mates. And horses do that. They get a little stablemate. Some do, mine don't, but some horses do, and they'll panic. And if you take one horse away from another, they run up and down the fence. They're going to whinny. They're whinnying to their herd mates because they're a very gregarious herd-bound horse, and they don't want to be separated from their like kind. That's just the way that they are. That's what keeps them kind of safe in the wild, is they have a herd that protects each other and they all look out for danger. But that intensity of that whinny is going to be, if something's really a good reason to panic, they're going to alert the other horses, or if there's a separation, they want to make sure that they can gather around together again for protection. So again, we listen for the frequency, the volume, or the intensity of that whinny.
Mm. Okay, I got it. Ooh, I feel like we should go in a recording studio now.
We are.
I know, but you know
You're
what I
in
mean?
Florida, and I'm in California. We're in our recording studios.
Yeah, we've got a virtual recording studio, but
Yes,
I
we
feel
do.
like, just all the different frequency, because that's what we deal with in sound is frequency.
Mhm.
So it makes sense. Now let's talk about flirting.
Oh, yes.
Hmm.
So of course we have two genders with horses. I'm going to throw that out there. We have our male horses and we have our female horses. A male horse is called a stallion if he's still intact, meaning he has his testicles and all the parts he needs to reproduce and create babies. And then we have our mares, and when they have their cycle and nature tells them that they are cycling at the point to where they can possibly breed and create more little horses, that's when they will use a flirting sound. So the stallion will use a nicker, but it's a very different type of a nicker. It's very intense. It's definitely frequency is very frequent, very frequent. He talks constantly. As a matter of fact, it's like someone telling a story. You wish they would just shut up because that story goes on and on and on and on. But the stallion constantly, that's the way he's going to flirt with these mares, is he's going to romance them. So there's a different nicker that a stallion will use in convincing this mare that I think it's time that we should get together. And
Ooh.
so they have a sound that they make for flirting. And that's also to stimulate the mare to get her receptive so that she can be bred. Now, on the mare's other end, if she's not quite ovulating, obviously, and she's not ready to be bred, she won't respond to that wonderful little romance that the male horse is trying to convince her. She will turn around and squeal like a stuck pig, and that's her way of refusing him.
Oh,
So when you
wow.
hear that squeal, she is not receptive. And he knows that. So he has to make a choice there of either backing off and not pushing the issue. Maybe today she has a headache. Today's not the day.
Oh boy. I'm
But
tired of you.
yeah, but she has a squeal, and it is very clear what that squeal means.
Yeah, I've heard that before, but
Yeah.
not like in the flirty part, like a really like.
Well, okay, so that squeal is used, and it mostly comes from mares, but geldings will make that sound. If two horses greet each other, and let's say it could be two mares, it could be a gelding that is a neutered male who cannot reproduce, and he flirts with a female that might be coming into estrus, might be coming into her cycle, but she isn't quite ready. She's going to tell him to get lost. She's not going to know that he's not a stallion, except that she probably would if he were to continue. She's going to know that he really doesn't have the capability of doing that. And so she's going to reject him, and she'll reject him with a squeal. She'll reject other mares that might get close to her just because she's a little more moody. And I guess most females understand what I'm talking about when it's their monthly cycle. And so the female horse uses that squeal to basically repel and say no.
Okay. And then she could kick too, right? If she,
Yes, if it's that intense, if she's that adamant, yes, she can. So that stallion has to pay attention and stay out of the way. And people need to pay attention and stay out of the way. There's a lot of different ways to breed horses. We could talk about that all day long too. There's hand breeding, there's pasture breeding, which I think is a little more dangerous. Hand breeding, you can really control what's happening and make sure the job is done correctly and get the horses prepared. And then of course we use AI, which means artificial insemination in the horse business. And
not the other. Yeah,
that's
that's
the other, and
AI.
that's when you collect the stallion separately and you inseminate the mare separately.
And there's no robots involved. No
robots.
No.
No.
Okay. Well, that big squeal that you're talking about, could that also mean like real danger or pain as well? That kind of sound? That big squeal?
No, the squeal doesn't come from pain.
Okay.
Um, Horses have an amazing ability to accept being uncomfortable. I guess that's the best way to say it. I don't want to say I've seen horses in excruciating pain, but I have had horses have some injuries, and I've had to be able to address that. Um, and mainly, if let's say, if their leg is cut, something is severed, unfortunately an artery or something like that, they're not going to really squeal in pain. They're going to squeal or whinny in panic.
Mm.
Because I think every living, breathing creature wants to survive and wants to continue to breathe and live.
Okay.
So there's a difference in how a horse is going to respond. It's not that I'm in pain. It's that, oh my gosh, I can, my life is a little bit threatened here. I need some help. What am I going to do? And it's just, there's an interesting whinny that's involved in a panic situation when there's severe danger like that, if they've been injured very badly. They're not going to react to
Yeah.
the pain. It's actually, how our adrenaline takes over for us too. We don't feel pain.
Right.
Sometimes we can look and see that we broke our arm or we've got this major cut, but adrenaline takes over, and it really, adrenaline takes over, so we survive. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
breathe. We're going to move. We're going to get help. This is what adrenaline's for. So,
Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
really true. And there's also not, depending on the danger too, they may not want to be so loud depending on what the danger is. May want to hide. We do that as humans and animals, fight or flight, and, but I don't know. I've never really seen a horse kind of hide
Well,
personally.
no, no. Now, sometimes horses get in situations too, whether they're caught in a fence. They can be cast in a stall, which means if they roll over in a stall where obviously they have four walls and they roll too closely and they roll over and they get stuck next to a fence or the wall with their legs up in the air, some horses have a hard time getting out of that. That's called being cast.
Oh,
So they're not going to whinny when that happens. They're going to struggle and try to figure it out. Some horses are smart enough to know if they've got their foot caught in a fence or a wire, that they're going to stand still and not panic. Unfortunately, some horses don't react that way and they panic, which makes it even worse. So
mm,
you're not going to hear a horse that's upside down whinnying to try to call for help. You're just going to hear them struggle. You're going to hear that knocking on the wall door. You're going to hear, um, struggling, the horse's legs pounding against the wall until they can push themselves away to get up. But I've also seen horses in that position, unfortunately, that have been there for a very long time,
oh,
that they're almost at the point of giving up. So if they're
oh,
upside down, then it changes where the blood flows in their body. And eventually a horse can actually die from that because the blood flow is changed with their legs straight up in the air, and their heart can't beat the right way. So I've never seen a horse and I never saw one that's really close to death, but I've seen one that's given up.
mm-hmm.
So when they're at that
Yeah.
point giving up, they're not winning. They're not saying, come help me. They're not winning. They're just quiet. And either they've given up and they say, I'm just going to stay here. This is it. Or
Mm-hmm.
they're going to struggle hard to get away from that wall.
Yeah.
Get out of that wire.
That's rough. I mean, horses
Yeah.
do get, attached to fences at times and barbed wire and things like that.
No,
I've seen some,
barbed wire is horrible. You shouldn't have any. If you have a horse and you're going to get a horse and you buy some property and it used to be fenced with old barbed wire, the best thing you need to do is to take all that wire down and you put up a no climb wire fence for horses, which means they're very small little mesh. They can't get a hoof through it. There's different types of plastic fencing. There's pipe fencing. There's the aluminum fencing that come in pipe panels. You need to get rid of that barbed wire. That barbed wire is not good for you. It's not good for any animal. It's
no,
definitely not good for horses.
no, it's really bad. I mean,
It's
it
really
is.
bad. It's really bad.
I actually ended up in the hospital getting cut by barbed wire.
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
stitches. Yep. On my
Yeah,
stomach from
I've
it.
got one scar on my hand from it because somebody helping me take down a fence pulled on the wire when I was trying to help take down the
Yeah.
fence, and it just literally tore up my thumb. It was really something. But anyway,
And I know. Then they want
that's
to
why
give you
we get
those
that's why we
tetanus
get tetanus
shots.
shots. You get a
Ugh,
tetanus shot. What is it, every 10
no.
years? But you have to. If you're going to be around horses and working in the dirt, you need to get a tetanus shot.
No. That's like, those are, now
Yeah.
I'm going to do my own horse sound
So
now.
let's talk about the
Yeah.
last one, which is
Yeah.
really, really danger and alerting. So here's an example. This wonderful mare Dollar that I have is the horse that I rode, who's the horse that I rode on the 1,300 miles on the Chief Joseph Trail Ride. And the book I just published, Hoofprints Across Time, A Trail Ride to Remember, is all about Dollar carrying me on this wonderful historic trail. She's an amazing horse. She is very self-possessed. There's nothing that frightens this horse. She's bold. She can handle just about anything. But a little bit of background on her is that when she was a yearling, she survived a tornado in Minnesota and a barn fell.
Wow.
Okay, so she's got a few scars on her body from that barn falling on her. But what's interesting is I can have her out on the road and there's cars going by. I actually trained her to allow me to shoot a gun off of her. So this horse can handle all of this. She's just an amazing horse. And yet I've watched her twice in two thunderstorms that we have had here, where we've had winds come up to about 40 miles an hour. There's thunder and lightning. The trees are blowing over almost so much that the limbs touch the ground. Then they stand up again. They go to the other side. We've got one. As a matter of fact, that storm was in September of 21 when we had a major fire breakout 8 miles from our house up here in Sequoia National Park. And so that was the start of it. And what happened is the lightning actually started the fire. So I'm watching my horses in the paddock. I happen to be up on the patio behind my house watching Dollar and a few of the other horses. And that storm came up and the thunder cracked. And as it cracked, we actually had one tree limb that cracked because of the trees blowing. And as soon as the horse heard the tree limb cracking, she ran and let out this highest whinny I've ever heard, alerting everybody else to the danger. And that was a different sound than I've ever heard come out of her before. Wow. And she did that, which got the other two horses. They were all hanging out together where the three paddocks come together, and they like to take their afternoon siesta, their little nap together, where they all have their heads together at kind of like the Four Corners up there in New Mexico. I've got three corners that match, and the horses love to stand together. And that storm came up. And sure enough, here comes the wind, here comes the thunder, here comes the lightning, here comes the crack of this huge sycamore tree limb that's going to come down. Dollar, her head goes up and she whinnies. And these horses sense where this is happening. And she ran from that danger. But she ran at the same time that she let out the biggest intensive whinny and repeated it again to alert all the other horses on my property to get out of the way, get out from underneath that limb that was going to come down. So that was an amazing thing to watch. And she was the one that alerted the other two horses, and they followed suit. Everybody follows Dollar because she's the monarch of my ranch.
She's a madam. Yeah.
They respect her, and they'll walk through fire with her if she walks through fire. They all trust her. She is the head mare, the lead mare on my property, and they all respect her.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And then to watch it.
Yes.
So it's kind of interesting because it's like you want to protect everything and everyone, right? Mm-hmm. As right. The horse mama, but then you actually need to let them do what they do. Isn't that a balance too? Like, what's going on, but she's actually going to do it in a way that.
Well, she did. She protected everybody else. She alerted everybody else. Yeah. All the other horses. Yeah.
And quicker, maybe just because she's right there. She knows they're going to listen. And sometimes you really need to let the animals do it. Like, I have a friend, her dog doesn't normally get out, but, has gone through a hurricane. And so, a whole wall came down.
Oh.
And part of, it's, Nancy and I have been in hurricane zones over the last few months. And, so much happens. Your property changes. It actually shifts. You've got to realize these disasters actually move the terrain a little bit. Things get wonky.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anyway, so where there used to be a wall is now gone. Mm-hmm. So she's got a makeshift fence, and these are elder dogs that don't really do anything. Well, one just managed to, I can go through here, and it it was a makeshift fence, and everyone's used to not going out and not even having the physicality to jump like the makeshift. She just it just moved, She gets out. Well, she's inside, knowing her dogs go in and out all the time, no problem. The other dog comes up to her and lets her know, like, you need to come outside. And the other dog let her know that the other one was out of the and she was able to get her dog back inside because they're elder, so
Mhm.
she wasn't trying to be, she's elder and it can't really go that far, but
Mhm.
the other dog knew, uh-oh, danger, danger, get
Yep.
mommy and let
Mhm.
her know. So I think
Mhm.
that's, so people
Well,
underestimate animals in these situations, but
oh, you
sometimes,
shouldn't. You
man,
shouldn't at
you
all.
shouldn't.
God has given them a sixth sense to be in this world and in their environment, and He's given each animal and their species a way of analyzing their surroundings. Horses are always
Yeah.
going to be on the outlook. They're always going to listen, and so are dogs. Animals are tuned in to Mother Nature a lot more than we are, and we need to actually respect the fact that they can see those sounds and hear those sounds, communicate with each other. Um, even another species, we cross the species. If all of a sudden there's several birds that are fighting and they're squawking and they're fighting over, let's say, a dead squirrel or something on the road, your horse is going to stop and look at that. Like, okay, those animals are having some very strong, intense words. What is happening? So they're gonna look at another species and see what's going on. So everybody tries to analyze their environment to be
Mm,
safe.
yeah. It's really true, right? You
Yes.
know? Yeah. 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 You gotta, that's how it's so important. I'm so glad we did this segment, you know, because it's like you say, you always have to be very aware and watch your horses, watch their behavior. We talked
Hmm.
about horse behavior on the bees, I think it was. Was
Yes,
it the
we did.
bees?
Yes, it
Yep.
was.
And actually, I'm going to link that in the episode note, everyone, because it is watch, listen, and look, or what is it
Yes.
before you cross the street?
Perfect. Well,
Um, but
spend time with your horse to get to know everything about your horse.
yeah,
It's
it,
it's
because
very
that's the
important.
thing. When you watch them, you know what their normal habits are, and then when they're not doing what they normally do,
That's right.
something's wrong. But then you
Right.
can start hearing their different sounds,
Hmm.
which, and then you know where to trust them for what as well, right? Where their strong
Yes.
suit is, like how Dollar's strong suit, you
Yes.
know?
Hmm.
So yeah, I love this.
I don't think she's got a weak point in her. She's really an amazing horse. I wish
She's a
I had 10
beautiful
more of
horse.
her. Yeah. Her full brother that I'm riding on, the Chief Joe now, um, is not as bold as she is. He has to analyze things a little bit more. He's not as brave, but he's still
Mm,
a wonderful, wonderful horse. But Dollar's just amazing, and how self-confident she is. And I just love that about her.
mm. She's awesome. She's beautiful. I
Thank
love
you.
that part of it is really getting to know the animals.
Yes.
Because they amaze you and teach you things. And sometimes they teach us lessons that we can learn for ourselves,
Hmm.
on how to
Hmm.
be. And sometimes like you're saying, that there's subtleties,
Hmm.
and the subtleties are something us humans can learn in life.
Yes,
I'm trying.
right. But we also need to be good stewards of this wonderful creation that God has given us. And
Hmm.
if you have all of a sudden you have something wrong with your horse, you're not sure what it is. You need to articulate what you're seeing when you call the vet and say, "My horse is doing this, and it's not normal, and it's not a regular thing that he or she always does." And so that's why observation is important. And we have so much at our disposal now with Google, and you can ask your phone anything, and you get an answer out of it. And it's good. It's good to ask your phone a lot of questions if you don't recognize something, and pretty much your phone's going to be able to figure out the answer for you. And so you can put it into words so you can help yourself and help your horse if you have to call a vet.
Exactly.
There's,
Exactly.
yeah, there's just different things about your horse, and you need to just know everything you can about them if you really want to be a good partner and a good steward of taking care of them.
Yeah. 'Cause you're being a parent, you know?
Yeah, a horse parent, a good horse
Yeah.
parent.
Would you ever call a horse a pet? It's different.
No, no.
Okay.
No, they're not my pets.
No.
A pet is if you define that word, it's taking you could take your hand and certainly pet your horse, but they're not sitting at your heel like a dog would or sitting in your lap like
Yeah.
a cat would. And to me, that's my more interpretation of a pet.
Mm.
Something that you can cuddle and stroke. And of course, my horse can't sit in my lap. You wouldn't be able to find me.
No, I mean, I know that's what I think people must
That's
also be
funny.
amazed by you, because you're a little person,
Yeah, I know.
and
Yeah.
people, and you're riding these, majestic and magnificent, animals that are so big. And, so you're proving that this communication and and training and
Right.
observing and listening through
Yes.
all that, because you cannot control a horse through brutality. You
Oh,
will
absolutely
not
not.
win.
No,
And
absolutely not.
and size does not mean that
Yeah.
you're not going to, just like we we're talking about the bears, you're not going to do that to a horse, and you will lose, because the
Yeah.
minute you fall down, that horse, I've seen, we've talked about that on the show before about, mistreating, and, the communication is everything.
You're not going to
Whether,
accomplish anything with force. Absolutely not when it comes
yeah,
to a
yeah,
horse.
because you can't. I
No,
mean, you physically can't, Christy, as a
no.
human, and I don't
Mm-mm.
care how small or big you are, but you're living proof of this, that all of these little subtleties and all the little bits of training, all of that really, really work, so
It
I
does.
love that.
Patience and observation and learning
Yeah.
their language. We learn their language and they learn ours, and then we have this wonderful partnership. And it's
Mm.
so easy. It's so easy.
And it's love.
With a lot of love. Yeah, I was just going to say, with a lot of love thrown in too.
Yeah. Love is everything. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Nancy and I walk around, as we pet sit across the country. And first thing we do, actually, when the pet parent leaves, we hang out with the animals. We
Mhm.
sit down with them. So some animals have anxiety, and, some animals are just so used to people, and,
Mhm.
dogs are like, come on, let's play. Then we'll do that. And we start to watch their behavior and recognize their behavior and be
Mhm.
very observant, because we don't know them, right?
Yeah,
They're
right.
new. And so it's like a crash course on these animals. So
Mhm.
we're really watching. And then, if we see anything that we go, hey, I didn't see that, we always try to be there the night before the sit
Mhm.
begins, because then we're watching the animals with the pet parent and kind of seeing the communication. So we try to mimic that kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
keep what's going on, but it's that observant. It is listening as well. And that's how you know when an animal is sick too, is listening.
Actually, Nancy, Lisa, the best thing when you're in a new situation like that with any animal is not to come on strong, not to try to get into their space, not to be too demanding. You're
Nope.
really better just backing off,
Yep.
allowing that horse to come and approach you.
Yeah.
He'll
Just like
come to
cats.
you. He'll come to you when he's ready, when he's interested, when he thinks he can trust you, and he's going to study you for a while. He's going to study you to see what kind of a person you are, whether or not he should even trust you. So
Exactly. If you're
you're better off with
jumpy,
lack of
ooh.
pressure in the very beginning
Mm.
for an animal that doesn't know you well. Well, Nancy,
Well,
this has been a fun session. Thank you so much. I love this M.
I love this, but don't be jumpy around horses for the first time. Like, oh yay, I'm jumping on a horse. No, you're not. Not wrong, Christy. You're not. But Christy, before we go, what are we talking about for next month's episode?
We're going to talk about going over fences. And there's
Okay.
2 specific ways that we ride horses over fences. And I think my audience might be interested to know the difference between the two and that terminology and exactly what it means. So we will discuss which is going to be over fences.
Okay, everyone, thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's ABCs of Horses with Christy Wood. Everyone, we'll be back next month. Every second Saturday, we're here. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's ABCs of Horses featuring Christy Wood. You can keep up with Christy and learn more about her services and her books by going to her website, wdnhorse.com. Keep up with Big Blend Radio at bigblendradio.com.